Okay, let's dive in. We're talking artificial intelligence today, and, well, it's not just sci-fi anymore, is it? It's really baked into our daily lives now.
Absolutely. From your phone camera to, complex stuff happening in finance and medicine, it's everywhere.
But that also means there's a lot of noise,
Right.
a lot of hype surrounding it.
And that's the danger zone. When you have powerful, complex tech and loads of hype, you inevitably get confusion, sometimes misdirection, and unfortunately, sometimes outright fraud.
You figure out what's real is crucial,
Totally. Understanding the reality behind the buzzwords has never been more important.
which is exactly what we're trying to do in this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're working from a really interesting source today, a safety publication from Aurora Sapiens.
Right, with special thanks to Arooka mentioned in it.
And it's aimed squarely at helping you, our listener, someone who follows this tech space, to sort of cut through all that noise.
To think critically.
Exactly. And hopefully avoid getting, taken in by promises that might be a bit ahead of themselves.
hmm So, we're going to unpack what AI is, but maybe more importantly, what it currently isn't, what its real limits are right now.
And then look at how the gap between the aspirational claims and the actual verified reality, how that can be exploited.
And crucially, give you some practical tools, some steps you can take to protect yourself. It's about getting informed fast on a very specific risk.
Okay, so let's start with basics, though most of you listening probably know this. AI computer systems doing tasks that, well, used to need human intelligence.
Pattern recognition, data analysis, language, decisions, that kind of thing.
And we often hear about the two types, right? Narrow AI.
Yeah, the specialist. Great at one specific task, like voice recognition or spotting fraud patterns in transactions. That's what we mostly have today.
Compared to general AI, the sort of human-level thinking across lots of different areas.
Which is still very much theoretical. Important distinction. It's not here yet.
Right. So the source really emphasizes almost everything out there being marketed
Yeah.
is narrow AI.
It's powerful, no doubt. But it's built for a purpose, a specific task.
And this is where the language gets tricky.
Yeah.
Companies, understandably, want to describe their work, get investment, excite people.
So you hear words like revolutionary, game-changing, intelligent. The source calls them aspirational claims.
Which isn't inherently bad. Aspiration drives progress.
True, but the problem comes when those aspirational claims aren't clearly linked to the verified reality. What can it actually do right now?
So what are those real capabilities then, according to the source?
Well, most current AI, even the really impressive stuff, it fundamentally relies on sophisticated algorithms, statistical models. They're brilliant at finding patterns, making predictions.
But within the data they were trained on, right? And for the job they were designed for.
Exactly. That's the key constraint. So when it looks like AI is learning, it's not developing understanding like a human.
It's optimizing its models based on new data points.
Precisely. Still within that human-designed framework. It's incredibly powerful computation, absolutely. But it's not comprehension, not in the human sense.
Okay, so that gap, aspirational language versus the current technical reality of these narrow, data-hungry algorithms.
That's the fertile ground. That's where misrepresentation can really take root.
Let's dig into those limitations a bit more, because they're fundamental. Data dependence. We know AI needs tons of data.
But the publication really highlights the consequence. If that data is biased or incomplete or just not representative of the real world.
The AI learns and repeats those flaws.
Exactly. Garbage in, garbage out, basically. But potentially amplified.
And then there's the domain constraint.
Right. An AI trained, say, to spot tumors on one specific type of medical scan might be totally useless.
Or worse, actively harmful.
Yes. If you try to apply it to a slightly different type of scan or a different condition, even within the same medical field, it doesn't have that flexible reasoning we do.
Because there's no general understanding underneath it all.
It can master chess or Go or translate languages pretty well now.
But it doesn't understand chess strategy in a human way, or the culture behind the language it's translating.
It's all patterns and probabilities based on the data it saw. It lacks that adaptable fundamental understanding.
And that means unpredictability.
Yeah, when faced with something truly new, something outside its training parameters, it can fail, sometimes in really unexpected ways. And that's a limitation that marketing, well, it often glosses over that bit.
Which leads straight into overhyped expectations.
For sure. And the marketing hype isn't just, harmless excitement. The source points out it can actively mislead people, users, investors.
Creating a risk of overinvestment.
Definitely. People might pour resources into tech based on promises that are maybe years away from being feasible, if ever.
And then reality bites, and there's a financial loss.
It happens. So you've got these inherent technical limits, the aspirational marketing speak, and these potentially inflated expectations.
How does that actually open the door for, well, fraud?
Well, the most direct way is just misrepresentation of capabilities, like straightforward, fraudulent overstatements.
So companies just lying about what their AI can do.
Or exaggerating wildly, promoting metrics that haven't really been verified, or performance claims that sound amazing but lack solid proof.
But this stuff is complex. How are you supposed to spot that if you're not, a deep AI expert yourself?
The publication gives a really useful red flag. Look out for absolute language. Unqualified guarantees.
Like what?
Phrases like guaranteed success or 100% accuracy, especially on complex real-world problems, or promises of unrealistic returns without any transparent backup.
Backup like?
Like detailed methodology, data sources, how they tested it, rigorous protocols. Real AI performance is usually about probabilities, nuances, ranges, not absolutes.
Okay, so 100% accurate should set off alarm bells.
Immediately. Then there are more subtle deceptive marketing techniques.
Not quite lying, but...
Using manipulative rhetoric. Maybe using very definitive, certain-sounding statements where actually hedging terms like could, might, or in some cases would be more accurate. It creates a false sense of certainty.
And sometimes it just feels overwhelming, like they're drowning you in technical terms.
Yes. The excessive jargon tactic. Piling on buzzwords, complex terms without clear explanation. It sounds impressive, but...
It makes it impossible for a non-expert to actually judge the claim.
Exactly. It's a kind of smokescreen. Intentionally or not, it obscures rather than clarifies.
And this all gets worse if there's a lack of independent verification, right?
Crucially, if these bold claims aren't being checked by anyone else, no independent reviews, no third-party audits, no proper peer-reviewed studies, well, there's no reality check.
Due diligence falls short.
Right. And that creates the perfect environment for misleading or even fraudulent claims to just spread.
And the consequences. People without that deep technical expertise get misguided.
Making bad investments, maybe adopting tech that doesn't actually work as advertised or has hidden risks, it really preys on that information gap.
Okay, so that paints a clear picture of the risks. But the source doesn't just leave us there. It gives practical guidelines to protect yourself. Where should someone listening who already follows this space focus?
First step, the source suggests, is to really double down on enhancing your media literacy, specifically around AI.
So go beyond just knowing the buzzwords.
Yeah, understand the implications, like what does data bias actually mean in practice? What's the difference between correlation and causation when an algorithm finds a pattern?
Where do you get that kind of insight?
Seek out reliable sources that don't just report the news but analyze the claims. I think academic papers, if you can access them. Reputable tech journalists known for critical deep dives, establish expert analysis. Maybe workshops or webinars on evaluating tech claims.
So actively learn how to critique, not just consume.
Exactly. Then, step 2, conduct thorough research, real due diligence.
Which means looking beyond the company's own website or white paper.
Absolutely. Look for independent reviews. Look for case studies, but check if they have actual verifiable data. Are the testimonials specific and believable or just generic fluff?
And verifying the claims themselves.
Yes. How did they test it? What data did they use? Was it a realistic test environment or some perfect lab setup? Be skeptical.
And don't be afraid to ask questions.
Please do. If something sounds too good to be true or just unclear, push back. Ask for clear, evidence-based explanations. Ask for a demonstration, maybe even a small pilot project before you commit significant resources.
A legitimate company shouldn't be afraid of scrutiny.
Generally, no. They should be able to explain their work and its limitations. If they get evasive, that's another red flag.
And if the stakes are high, like a major investment.
Then seek expert opinions. The source strongly advises this. Talk to independent tech consultants, financial advisors who understand tech, maybe even legal experts familiar with technology contracts and claims.
Get an unbiased second look. Someone who isn't selling you the solution.
Exactly. Find someone to look under the hood with a critical eye.
Okay, what else?
Demand transparency. Make that a priority. Favor companies that are open about how their AI works, what data it uses, what its known limitations are, and importantly, how they validated their results.
Look for openness. Maybe companies contributing to open source or publishing peer-reviewed research.
Those can be good signs, yes. It suggests a commitment to verifiable progress, not just hiding behind a proprietary black box. We should advocate for higher standards of disclosure across the whole industry, really.
Make transparency the norm, not the exception.
Couldn't agree more. And finally, circling back to that earlier point, be wary of unqualified guarantees.
Those big red flags.
Yes. Any claim of guaranteed success for complex AI, promises of unrealistic returns with no credible model, any company that completely dismisses limitations or uncertainty.
Step back. Scrutinize.
Yeah.
Hard.
Absolutely. If it sounds too certain, you should be uncertain. Legitimate innovation nearly always involves acknowledging challenges, acknowledging what the tech can't do, or at least can't do yet.
Okay, so wrapping this up then, the core message from this Aurora Sapiens publication, using those insights from Arooka, seems pretty clear.
Yeah, navigating AI safely today isn't really about being scared of the tech itself.
It's more about understanding its current, very real limits.
And recognizing the specific ways those limits, combined with market pressures and hype, can be exploited.
Through misleading claims, through maybe outright fraud sometime.
But if you have that knowledge, you understand the difference between aspiration and reality. You know the technical weak spots. You know the right questions to ask. You demand transparency.
Then you're in a much stronger position.
Much stronger. To make informed decisions. Whether you're just choosing a new app, evaluating a tool for your business, or considering a serious investment.
So the advice is, stay informed, stay critical, cultivate that healthy, informed skepticism.
It's not just about AI, is it? It's a crucial skill for navigating our whole tech-saturated world.
Which leads perfectly into our final thought for you to ponder.
Okay. We've talked a lot about applying this informed skepticism to spot potential AI fraud demanding verified reality over aspirational claims.
So the question to leave you with is this. How can you take that same critical approach, that same demand for evidence and transparency, and apply it more broadly?
To all the other technologies you encounter, the ones you rely on, every single day, something to think about.